Welcome to Satya, your podcast on spirituality and spiritualizing your daily life. Today I speak with Ulrik Adinatha Lyshøj, co-founder of the Tantra Temple in Denmark and co-author of the book Let's Talk Tantra. He is also main teacher at the International Esoteric Tantra Massage Education. Today he will be my first guest on a new series of episodes which will be themed around the godly attribute of godly Eros. And this series will be called The Era of Eros. Welcome, Ulrik.
Thank you.
Very happy for you to be here. I invited you today to speak a little bit about the godly attribute of godly Eros because of your work mainly. But I usually start each episode with the same question, asking what is spirituality for you and what place does it have in your life?
Yes, good question. Well, to begin with, when I was younger, spirituality didn't have any place in my life, to be honest. It was just not interesting for me with spirituality, and I didn't really have any experiences. I went to church a few times because my mother dragged me there, but I couldn't really see the point. And I didn't have any spiritual or religious experience or so. But later on in life, when I was in my mid-20s or so, I started to have some kind of awakenings. I also started reading books that were more into spirituality and the spirit in general. Carlos Castaneda's books about Don Juan, for example, which were kind of opening my mind a lot. And then I started to have some experiences like perceiving a past life at some point where I was really I was in nature, but I was really identifying with this past life, more shamanic style, where I had known everything about the herbs and the nature and the animals, and I could kind of tune into that, and it felt so real that I knew it was me.
Yeah,
it was not just something I was imagining, and and I had a few more experiences like that. Suddenly, starting to see connections between everything, and in this way, I can say I was gradually awakening my spirit and thus also becoming a more spiritual person. And then I started yoga practice and a yoga course with a lot of theory also related to spirituality, which also opened my mind and consciousness a lot because it started to give me a language. It started to give me a language to talk about these things that before had been like, I wouldn't even know where to start talking about spiritual matters. But now gradually I learned terms and got a language and also started a practice that actually brought me deep into my own spirit, so to say, starting to feel myself much better. And the question in me started to awaken. Who am I? And that has been like a quest ever since, to go deeper under the surface, deeper in all my layers, and get to the core, get to the essence of who I am. And that search, that quest, that drive to learn who I truly am, that is for me spirituality. Whether it's yoga or prayer or meditation or I don't know, shamanic rituals in the rainforest, or it can have many shapes. I'm not doing 1,000 different spiritual practices just to test them all, but in the essence, the aspiration to reveal who we truly are, that's for me spirituality.
And where is Eros in the picture there then?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's even a very good question, because now what brought me to that yoga course in the first place was actually Eros, because it was a Tantra yoga system. And I was very curious since very early about Eros, about the erotic life, about making love, about what it is. First of all, when I was very young, it was just the curiosity, what is that? And I knew it was something special. And as I started to have my first experiences, it also became this kind of like a search to do it better. You know, I was very confused when I was a teenager because all this eroticism was obviously something which was important for people, but they didn't talk about it. There was a lot of shame around it. And where did you go to learn it? I was so confused because anything else you have to learn as a young person. I mean, you take a course, you go to school, they teach you. You take a driver's license as a driving instructor. I mean, it's so natural, right? We learn from the ones who know about it. Yeah. But when it came to making love, I was like, where are the teachers? How are we supposed to learn this? I had some experiences with with inexperienced girls, and it was very confusing, to be honest. So when I found this Tantra course, sometimes in my mid-20s or so, I was just very curious because I thought, that's probably where I can learn all these techniques and how to be a better lover and, what kind of Oriental Kama Sutra things that was in my imagination.
All the
and then it turned out
with it.
It turned out that the course was so much more. Mm-hmm. It was teaching about tantric eroticism indeed, but one of the things I learned was that if I want to be a better lover, I have for sure to improve everything as a human being. Like, it's not just about fancy techniques for the bed, I had to work on my vital life force, I had to work on learning how to control this erotic energy so you can actually send it in a direction instead of just losing it. I had to work on my confidence as a man, this ability to kind of take the lead, when it came to lovemaking, like to have a lot of love, even improving the ability to love even deeper, but also the ability to take the lead in the erotic experience. And we learned about transfiguration and seeing the higher perspective and the universal masculine and the universal feminine merging together in the two, so it becomes like a cosmic lovemaking. And I also realized that I have to train my mental focus. That was a big eye-opener. If you want to make love in a long time, like for a long time, you also need to be able to focus for a long time and not to start either fantasizing about something else or remembering something else, or the mind can go crazy sometimes thinking about the work, for example. I realize sometimes I'm thinking about the work while I make love, and sometimes I think about making love when I work. It's like, what? Focus, come on, So that was also a big opener, like this, to train the ability to just stay extremely present for a very long time. And spiritually speaking, also, the tantric lovemaking is really having this aim to expand the consciousness into the infinite. And for that, I also needed to learn how do I do that? How do I do that? How do I take the lovemaking beyond just physical and actually make it into a profoundly spiritual experience? So that was like a big mouthful. The more I got into it, I realized, wow, the bigger it is. And in that process, the teacher said to me, yoga is really, really good, because yoga can help you not only learn the techniques for mastering the erotic energy, because if you don't lose it through ejaculation, you have to send it somewhere else. That excess of energy has to go somewhere else. You can't just accumulate it in one place, So that was also like, okay, how do I do that? And that turned out that yoga was really the best for doing that. But also all these qualities I just mentioned, they're simply just things you can train through yoga. That was also a big eye-opener. Like when I was younger, I grew up in the countryside and yoga was like, I was certain yoga is for girls and for hippies, right? It was definitely not for me. But when I tried it first time, I was like, wow, okay, that's something else than I thought. We did some spine stretching technique, and after that I was just flying. I had the feeling I was 10 centimeters taller.
Wow.
And when I left the room, I was like, I almost had the feeling I have to be careful not to knock my head on the door frame, because I just felt so much bigger than normal and like more erect somehow, straight. It was quite I was hooked on yoga from day one. Even though I had so much resistance beforehand. So to get back to your question, it was kind of Eros that got me into a spiritual practice in the first place. It was this strong curiosity to learn, to improve myself, to perfect myself, to really learn how do you do it good, not only good, but really good. Yeah.
And so, well, I have the big question of the interview is, what actually is Eros?
Yes, exactly. Because when I say I was very interested in Eros, I have to be honest and say I was also very interested in sex. And they are not the same thing. And that was another big eye-opener I learned through this Tantric course, is that sex and Eros is not the same thing. So sexual energy and erotic energy is not the same. And it's not like erotic is just a nicer word we use instead of sexual. Actually, it's fundamentally different. And the way it manifests is that sexual energy is instinctual. The sexual energy is what is put there in everybody to make sure we procreate, to make sure that we make the babies even without education. And we know for a fact people don't need education to make babies. They will figure out, just like the animals. Nobody's teaching them. They figure out anyway how to do it. And then, of course, we are endowed with consciousness as human beings, so we can also figure out how to not make babies every time we do it. But that doesn't change the instinct. The instinct is still there, the drive which is pulling people towards, meeting, excitement, ejaculation. That's kind of the manual, how you do it practically. It has to go towards that finality, because then biologically we feel we did the job. Even we didn't ejaculate close to a uterus, so there will not come any babies out of it, but still the body and the instincts feel we did what we had to do here. And then tomorrow we do it again to make sure we multiply as much as possible. But erotic energy is something completely different. Even though seen from the outside, it could look a little the same, but erotic energy is what uplifts our spirit. It is what brings people closer together. It is what is awakening the soul and opening our eyes to something bigger and feeling united with something universal. So where the sexual energy drives us towards the individual, erotic energy draws us towards the universal. And one of the big differences, how you can feel the difference, is that sexual energy leads either to a superficial satisfaction in the feeling, okay, I took a pressure, I released the pressure here, or it leads to frustration. While the erotic energy, it brings this profound fulfillment. It's like your soul is nourished by something deeply. Like it gives this, it cannot frustrate you. That's one of the big differences, actually. An erotic experience cannot be frustrating. It's deeply fulfilling whether you have a little bit, a big bit, or a lot, you know. It's just it can be a flirt, it can be an eye gaze, it can be a smile, it can be a touch, something which like awakens some erotic energy, and it's just like, it feels good. But it doesn't have this instinctual, okay, what's the next step, next step, next step? We have to, if we excite something here, we have to move on, move on, move on. It doesn't work like that with erotic energy. You can have a long foreplay that doesn't lead to a penetration, and still it's deeply fulfilling for both of them, because they awakened their life force, they came closer to each other, and they felt more like one.
Would you say Eros is a different form of love?
Not exactly. Even though if you ask the ancient Greek philosophers, they talk about 4 types of love, out of which Eros is one of them. But I would rather say that love is a type of energy and Eros is another type of energy, just that they go so well together and they often come easily together in a package, so to say, so they can easily be felt as the same. But I wouldn't call it necessarily another form of love.
But would you, for example, still be able to like have like if you are not able to be in an erotic state and you're more going towards the sexual, can you still have love? Can you have love and sex together, or is it like not possible?
It is possible. It is possible. It's possible to feel deep love for another human being and yet become instinctual. And it's not just about sex and love. It's possible for 2 people to love each other and do all kind of instinctual things, even they love each other deeply. And when sex and love, they blend together, actually often it kind of, it's not very fulfilling in the long run. Because normally with sexual energy, it's getting depleted over time. So when people love each other and they have sex and they lose some of that sexual energy, for example, through the ejaculations of the man, it's like they're gradually taking out the energy, they're gradually removing the desire, which may have been strong in the beginning. And then after a while, after some years, it's like everything faded out. The energy is not very strong anymore.
Do they also lose the love then?
Can happen. Yeah. Or not necessarily losing the love, but more like building so many ideas and projections and patterns that covers the love, so that the love cannot be felt anymore. And if they also add a lot of common possessions like house and garden and social life together, they could actually end up having a relationship where the love is just totally buried. Like you can't see it. It's like the relationship becomes a tombstone over the love which was there in the beginning, and they are able to continue a relationship without the love. It becomes this like a practical, it's like a little company they're running, with the 2 people on the board, and they have these regular board meetings about the practical
really
things.
Sad.
Yeah, it is. But actually, it often happens, especially when kids come along, because of the way that our society normally organizes, like this nuclear family, 2 parents and some kids together, which is actually extremely stressing, especially if also both parents, they want to have a full-time job. Then it's a huge workload, which means that they have very little time for lovers' time. I've actually, through my work, I met many couples who reach a point around 20, 25 years together when the kids are starting to grow up and even to move away from home. And they realize the last 20 years, we were mom and dad. And we want to learn how to be a man and woman again, because we completely forgot how it was and how we did. And now we have to, either we split apart or we look at the next part of life together without the kids around, and we really have to figure out how do we do, because we can't stay together just like that if we don't invent something new here.
And that's then when Eros comes in the picture again.
That's where Eros is
Maybe
such
not
an
again.
amazing way to get out of that trap. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. When sex and love, they mix together, sexual energy is very strong. Yeah? And when people love each other, the sexual energy, when it's also there, like strong attraction, sexual experience, and so on, actually that instinctual force is building a lot of patterns, and it can and actually amplify all kind of tendencies like attachment and jealousy and fights and crisis. It's like the sexual energy amplifies, because sexual energy makes things very individual, very personal, where erotic energy, as I mentioned, makes it much more universal. So sexual energy makes it much more individual. That means sexual pleasure is something I give to you and nobody else. You know, it becomes extremely personalized, yeah? Or you're the one that should give me sexual pleasure, at least in this, you know, at least as often as I wanted, you know. And because the energy is very strong, we build those patterns, they become very strong as well. And then you can have relationships where none of them really feel good. None of them really feel fulfilled or satisfied, or sex becomes a kind of bargain, like a negotiation. You know, one is giving sex to the other one in order to have emotional comfort or financial safety, or it becomes like this unspoken negotiation where erotic energy, you can't trade it. You know, it's not a commodity. It's something you share. It's something you create together, which brings unity and profound connection.
Yeah, because it's so beautiful and uplifting also, that it doesn't have this attachments to it.
Exactly. And that is something that I have not only experienced a lot, but I'm also teaching actually through the Esoteric Tantra Massage Education, because Tantra Massage, which is what we can call my line of profession, is actually a profoundly erotic experience. It's not sexual, it's erotic. So that means that it's possible to, as a tantric masseur, to give a beautiful erotic experience to a person you have never met before, or just booked a massage. And of course, you have a little talk in the beginning, you get to know that person, but actually, when the massage starts, it can be very intimate and very erotic, but not in this sexual way, not in an instinctual way. It's not all kind of desires that has to be fulfilled, otherwise one of us will be frustrated here. And that is actually for many people a kind of a new experience, that it's possible to be intimate with somebody they haven't met before, and also that it's possible for them as a receiver of a tantric massage to experience their erotic energy while being deeply relaxed. So it's not this hectic excitement like, oh, I feel something, we have to do something about it, but more like this profound relaxation where you feel the life force just growing and growing, and it starts to bubble and tingle in the whole body, and you feel so alive and so full of energy while being deeply relaxed. And that is not this kind of personal attachment. So it's not like, ooh, I get excited, we should do something, you know. No, it's rather like, wow, I feel my own power suddenly fully released, awakened. And with that power, I can go home and do my job better, or be a better father in my family, or you know, simply I have the power to fulfill my life mission in this world, you know, to do what I'm supposed to do, because that's the beauty of erotic energy. It's a power. It's a strong power. And when we learn a little how to maneuver that energy, we can actually empower all kind of other domains. So where sex is mainly happening between the legs, and to some extent between the ears as well in the mind, erotic energy is something that happens all over, not just the whole body, but the spirit, you know. It's the soul which is turned on.
It's so beautiful when I hear you speak, like realizing this difference between sex and eros. It's such a beautiful gift to share this with the world. And like you say, you're also teaching and you're offering these massages that people can just come and then they go home with this new view on life, and they can take this into their own daily life and share it along with their partners or whatever. It's so beautiful.
Yes, and I think people should learn. I think we should teach it much more, because, as I said, when I was a teenager, I was looking and I was searching, and I was actually looking up all the sexology books I could find, and I still had the feeling there must be more. You know, there must be more, and I couldn't learn it. I thought, in my naive teenage mind, I thought some woman will come and show me, but it didn't happen. Like with the girls my age, I had the feeling I have to figure out what to do, because they're just as inexperienced as I am. And I've spoken with many people in their 40s, 50s, 60s, for whom this is new. It's a revelation. They never learned, you know, because we just don't learn. And nowadays, where porn is so readily accessible all over the internet, that anybody with a smartphone who knows how to spell sex, which means around age 8, 9, 10, they start to find porn. And porn is, first of all, fiction. And if somebody gets the idea this is real life, they're as confused as somebody seeing a car chase in an American action movie thinking this is how you drive a car. You know, it's not. It's fiction. And it's not very instructional either. And 99 point, a lot of nines, % of porn is sexual. It is constructed, it's designed to arouse people very fast and bring them towards an ejaculation or an explosive orgasm or some kind of finality where they can then, you know, turn off the screen and say, okay, that's it. Pressure is off. And if that is what young people feed their brain, which is still under construction, as it is in the teenage years, you know, you are just absorbing everything you experience, and without knowing it, subconsciously you are devising, this is the world, this is how you do things. So if their minds are being influenced by fictional porn, when they start to have real lovers in real life, they would think this is how you do. And the boy might think something is wrong with him if his lingam is not super big and super erect all the time. The girl might think something is wrong with her if her body doesn't look like that, and if she doesn't scream like that, and if she doesn't have orgasms like that, and if they don't have anal sex the first time they meet, and, you know, all these weird ideas that you could pick up from porn. I'm not saying there is something wrong with that. It's just if people get the idea that this is how to do it, they will try to do it like that, which is even further away from the erotic path, the pure Eros, as we call it. It's pure. It can, like, erotic lovemaking can be very intense. It can be sweaty, passionate, dynamic, screaming orgasms, but it's still very pure. When I say erotic, I don't mean, oh, it's only very soft touch, and it's like we're not really doing anything, but it can be also very intense. Just that it's pure and it's connecting. Nobody gets lost in their own instinctual pleasure like can happen in sex. I've spoken with many women who say that sometimes having sex with a man feels as if he is masturbating in her. It might start nice, but at some point when he gets kind of caught by the desire, he just runs on autopilot, and his hips are moving a little like a dog in heat who's just like, moving instinctually, and he lost the connection with her. She could be looking away, rolling her eyes, and he wouldn't even notice because he's just like lost in his own instinctual satisfaction. That's sexual. And then what happens? Either she says, stop, I don't want it anymore, and then he's frustrated, or she says, okay, I'll let him finish, and think of something else, or even fantasize about somebody else. And that actually creates a bigger distance between the two. Even though technically they're doing something very intimate, they're naked, they're touching each other, they're all over each other, and yet they're very far apart. While an erotic experience is bringing them closer. They feel each other. If they make love with the pure erotic energy, it can be, as I said, intense and dynamic, but the moment one of them is a little off, the other one would stop immediately and say, hey, my love, what's happening? They would feel each other because they're in it together. Yeah.
So Eros is also a godly attribute. Why is it a godly attribute? And I can see why this also can be maybe a little bit upsetting for some religious people. And you already, in a way, touched on it a little bit, but can you maybe say a bit more?
This universe is full of energies, and energies that have a different frequency. A bit like the radio channels that we can tune in with our radio set has different frequencies, and we need to find the channel. Yeah. The same with energies, from the lowest, most condensed, what we call physical matter, to the highest vibration of them all, which is what we call spirit, and everything in between. There we have a lot of energies on different frequencies. And some of these universal energies that we call godly attributes are energy that never modifies their frequency and that are all beneficial. And we can tap into them, tune into them. And when we do that, they start to flow more freely through our energy system, and we feel empowered and enriched by that energy. Godly love, for example, is such an energy, or the pure Eros is such an energy. And that means when we tune into the pure Eros, we're actually empowered by what we can call the erotic energy of God. And when we do that, we feel automatically closer to God. We feel automatically closer to, like, we feel more one with the universe. We feel more one with everything that exists. And that is not, in my opinion, like anti-religious in any way, whereas sex, the sexual energy, can easily bring people further away from God because it becomes more instinctual. In other words, we let the animal in us take over rather than letting the godly aspect of us take over.
Yeah, I also felt this in my own experience with Eros, how there is this connection with sacredness and how it just brings this sacredness to life. It also brings life to life, and it brings everything more alive somehow, but also this, like a sacredness inside and outside. And it's very special actually to be able to experience Eros in these ways.
Yes. And sacred is when consciousness is there. That's what makes something sacred. It's when we really bring our consciousness into it. And this is also one of the big differences between sex and Eros, is that sex can happen without consciousness, meaning it's instinctual. We don't need to turn consciousness on. That's why I just explained that you can have such an experience where you're kind of not really there. You're just lost in your own fantasy or whatever. Whereas a pure erotic experience requires consciousness. The moment you lose awareness upon your doing, instinct starts to take over. That's how we're designed. But with consciousness, we can choose something else than our instinctual patterns. And that makes the experience sacred. This is what does all the difference.
And this choice is a beautiful gift that we have as humans. We can choose every moment.
Exactly. And that is spirituality in its essence, when we consciously start to choose in every moment. In every moment, we are faced with either letting my instincts and my subconscious patterns run the show, like a robot, practically, or I can be conscious and make conscious choices and choose something else than my instinctual patterns. Then we can say we are on a spiritual path.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Do you feel like you want to add something more to everything you already said? Something important you feel to share? Or something you didn't say yet?
I mean, of course, there are many things I could say, but for now, I think I just want to emphasize that this. I mean, I really love this talk, and I'm very happy for everybody who's listening, who might be inspired. And then the next step would be to do it, to practice it, because pure Eros, the godly attribute of pure Eros, is not philosophy. I mean, we can talk about it, we can teach about it, we can debate about it, but we should live it. We should do it. We should practice it. We cannot make a philosophical debate about whether it's this or whether it's that. We have to do it hands-on, get in touch with life for real through the pure Eros. And one step is to learn the difference between sex and Eros. To realize, when am I in my instinctual patterns and when am I pure and conscious, having a sacred erotic experience. And then to train more of that, more of that, more of that, until we really know how to do it. Thank you for having me on your program.
Thank you for saying yes to my invitation. And I even hope to see you here again.
Yes, I'd love to.
I hope you enjoyed this episode together with Ulrik's fresh way when speaking about Eros. Make sure to follow so you know when the next episode of the Era of Eros is published.